of Yale School of Management, if I recall correctly, class of 1980. He is the founder and CEO of Ripplewood Holdings, an eminent private equity investor. But Tim is involved in a host of things at Yale School of Management. And it's his initiative to bring in prominent leaders, business leaders like Sir Martin Sorrell for informal conversations. I believe this will be an in-camera session. I don't want to speak on Tim's behalf, but I think he will lead Sir Martin through a series of questions. But I think we'll all have a chance to engage in a dialogue. So I just wanted to make sure that Tim's here before we launch it, but he'll be right back.
We can start now. Who's got a question? Come on, don't be shy.
Okay, so since Sir Martin is willing to have
we make him redundant. Come on. Who wants to kick off?
Make sure you press your microphone because we are live streaming.
Go ahead.
Oh, we are live streaming?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead. Can you say who you are and what you do?
Hi, yeah, I'm Peter Russell. I formerly worked in ad tech, so know your world a little bit. I'm curious if you think the regulation, the possible regulation of the digital marketing duopoly will help or hurt WPP.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the regulation. I guess as a result, in a way, you've already got regulation started in Europe with GDPR, which I think is this month or so. So it's already started. You referred to a duopoly. So I presume you're talking about Google and Facebook, because that's what people I call them the Seven Sisters. To add, they've got the big American five: Apple, Amazon, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, plus the two Chinese, Alibaba and Tencent, who are all, I don't think it's quite true now, given what's happened in the last few weeks, around half a trillion plus. So you've got about, 4 trillion of market cap. Now, in our branding surveys that we do, those 5 American companies top the branding survey, as well as topping market cap, or I think the 6th market cap company was Berkshire Hathaway, the last, what I call Berkshire Hathaway, but Berkshire Hathaway, the 6th one. And the phrase Seven Sisters sort of is a useful one. I mean, you could even say Jeff Bezos is the John D. Rockefeller of the 21st century. So, and when you think back to what happened then, there's a parallel. These companies are so powerful and so big. And the president now is talking about regulating Amazon. So it goes beyond the duopoly that you referred to. As far as it affects us, our clients want balance in the marketplace. So in the digital marketplace, our clients would say the line would be 75%. Google's advertising is around $100 billion, Facebook about $40 billion. We spent last year about $5 billion with Google. Our media book is probably about $75 billion. And $2 billion with Facebook. They'd be number 1 and 2. If Fox and Disney get together, they would be about 2.7, call it 3. Just give you orders of magnitude. So our clients probably want balance in the marketplace. So as far as it would affect us, it's probably helpful because it will get more balance into the marketplace. A regulation, whatever that might be. On data and data privacy, obviously GDPR, we've been preparing that for 2 years. And we think, we can handle it. We have first-party data. The changes that Facebook made in relation to Cambridge Analytica affected, I think, 9 data suppliers. And if you go to their website, we were one of those affected by it. We think actually probably it helps us in the end. So I think net, it's probably helpful to our clients and therefore helpful to us because it will bring about more balance. It'll make things more complicated, but it'll bring more balance.
So
Sorry, Tim. Yeah, we thought
I know
you'd fled.
I'd fled. I had the call of nature, which I thought I would answer. I don't think you've been introduced, and you don't really need much of an introduction. But I think it is fair to say that you are a rare combination of a great public company chief executive and an entrepreneur. I mean, there are a few, but the FTSE or the Fortune 500 are not full of entrepreneurs. So we're really delighted to have somebody with that combination of skills.
Thank you.
Which is, I think, what everybody at SOM's had a long sort of history of that entrepreneurial urge embedded in the culture. So you're a perfect model for SOM. I thought I would just ask you a few background questions, and then maybe there are lots and lots of smart people here with other questions. I want you to step back a little bit and just say, what are the things that, from your vantage point, which is quite unique given the things that you do outside of WPP, from your vantage point, what are the big things in business and society that we need to be thinking about, or certainly they need to be thinking about looking forward?
Well, if I think about it, that's a very big question.
It is a big question.
Yeah, it could cover everything. But let me look at if I look at it in terms of what are the forces that really affect us. I mean, us being WPP.
How about the forces affecting them?
Well, okay, it's the same thing at the end
Okay.
of the day. Always struck me, and this may sound simplistic, there are two buckets. One is the technological bucket and the other is the geographical bucket. You start with the latter first. If I think about, if I was here coming out of school, where would I focus? I think most of the people here have spent, or the MBA program has spent 5 years inside a company. They're doing the 2 years here and then they go out into the wide world again. Where would I focus my attention? And this may sound like apple pie and motherhood, but I think it is important. The next billion consumers, whatever might be going on in the packaged goods area, which we were talking about just before, or generally in industry, the next billion consumers are not going to come from the US or Western Europe, whether the UK is a member of the EU or not. They're going to come from Asia, from Latin America, from Africa, the Middle East, and Central and Eastern Europe. So that geographical challenge, which opportunity, which is not it doesn't appear to be as much of an opportunity today as it appeared to be, say, 5 or 10 years ago, because the growth rates of those parts of the world, the gap, Jim O'Neill's original BRICS and Next 11 analysis, which we sort of worked quite closely with him on. At that time, the growth rates of those economies was vastly superior to what was happening in the more mature markets of Western Europe. By that I mean US, Germany, UK, France, Italy, Spain, for example. So I think that's the first thing that everybody should be focused on. I mean, that can be translated into what languages you should learn, and that probably should be Chinese and code. And some people might disagree with that, but so that maybe with Spanish thrown in. So that would be one thing. The second thing on the technology area, which is a very difficult thing to it's a bit like the question that we had whilst you were out, about the technological changes. These are fundamental changes, not in the way that the consumers consume things, products and services, or media. It's a different way of life. I mean, the phone means that we've changed our lifestyle. You've only got to look at everybody's behavior on a day-by-day basis, how they get up in the morning, how they spend their day, when they're in a restaurant, when they're at work. I mean, it has totally changed the way in which we live our lives. And therefore, these technological changes, which are going to accelerate, again, that's pretty trite, and apple pie and motherhood, are the fundamental issues. So I would say, if I look at WPP in 2000, digital, if you can separate digital from everything else, was probably about 2 or 3% of our revenues, maybe 4% of our revenues. And the BRICS and Next 11 were, say, 10. Today, the BRICS and Next 11, or Asia, Latin America, et cetera, is about, hi, Jeffrey, hi, is about a third of our business, and digital is approaching half. If you can separate digital from non-digital, and there's an argument to say digital permeates everything. So those two things, to me, are and that's changing the strategies of all our clients. Without going through our clients individually, our biggest client faces changes in technology which change the nature of their business in the automotive industry. Our second biggest client, a packaged goods client, which had a ZBB company attempted takeover a year ago.
ZBB being zero-based budget.
Which I'm sure everybody, zero-based budgeting is nothing new. And even when I was at business school, God, 50 years ago, there were Jimmy Ling, Temco Vought on TV, you remember that?
Of course.
You're old enough to remember that. There were people, Hal Janine, used to be in a bunker like this.
I'm not sure Hal Janine was ZBB. He might have been
he was
more creative than that.
Used to be in a bunker and morning, you didn't know it was morning, noon, and night, and he'd be reviewing numbers for IT&T.
Right.
So it's always been there in its sort of essentials. But, ZBB has put, so number 2, be a ZBB pressure, 3 activists, number 3 activist, number 4 activist, and number 5 contemplating selling a significant part of its pharmaceutical business. So you've got tremendous change, but driving that change, and therefore influencing us, are those two things around technology and geography.
And what about it seems to me over the last 7 or 8 years, the political environment has changed and making economic predictions.
But you know this better than I do, because you study these things far more acutely than I do. Wasn't it forever thus? It is always. If you look back in time, Cuban Missile Crises. It's always been there. Now, whether it is more, the nature of it is different. The rise
nature of it's different.
Of populism. We have some leaders who are very different, without naming names, very different to what you and I might be used to or comfortable with. The rise of the inequality issues, particularly post-Lehman. Cheap money, loose central bank monetary policy, making money available at very low rates of interest. I think we did a 30-year bond a couple of years ago at less than 3% pre-tax. So you could buy a company at sort of 60 times earnings and not feel the pinch.
Right.
Certainly the marginal.
So while we're on the provocative, what about Facebook? First of all, the most important thing is, what's he going to wear to Congress? Everybody's speculating. I'm sure he's consulted you about what he should wear.
I think he'd wear a suit and a tie.
Do you? You think he'll wear a suit? But what?
I don't think he's going to go in a T-shirt, but we'll see. What's the betting? What does the class think?
Yeah, let's show of hands, a suit and tie.
T-shirt. Okay.
That's close. But really, are they, you've got a unique perspective on this as well. Are they going to explode? Are they going to be around? Are they going to radically change their influence?
Well, Facebook is only one of their brands, ironically. Somebody said to me, I remember last week, his wife didn't even know that Instagram was part of, and she uses it incessantly, part of Facebook. So, I don't think they will explode. I think they're in a very difficult position. But to give them credit, I think they are making strenuous attempts to change their operating procedures. You know, we can all be armchair quarterbacks and say they should have done this and they should have done that. Even before Cambridge Analytica, Google certainly said they were going to hire 10,000 more people. Facebook, I think it was 20,000, and they're going to be adding more. So coming back to the first thing for a minute, the 10,000 Google and 20,000 Facebook, I think the heart of the issue is they've always regarded themselves as technology companies, and I think they are media companies. Certainly, as far as they interface with us. I mean, we've been saying this for years, and that they have been unwilling. I remember I do something at Cannes every year called the Cannes Debate, and the very first one was about 7 or 8 years ago. We had Nikesh Arora from Google. He was at Google then. We had somebody from Microsoft. We had somebody from, I think it was Yahoo, and then from one other, I think, can't remember, but there were 4 of them. And I said, first question up was, are you a technology company or a media company? And they all said they were technology companies. They're not. They are media companies. And they are responsible for the content that flows through their pipes. They can't sit there and say, you know, we are digital engineers that are tightening the nuts on our digital pipes with our digital spanners and disown responsibility with content. And the chickens are coming home to roost on that point. And going back to the question, you know, they are enormous. They do have the resources. They do have the margins. There isn't the transparency that others have to wrestle with. I mean, nobody knows how the algorithms work. There have been times when they've altered the algorithms and not said how they work, which has caused even more confusion. So I think net, this is what's happening in a way is a result of 2 things. I mean, there's some extraneous things like, you know, the guy that controls Amazon also controls the Washington Post, which is a problem. But that's idiosyncratic. But effectively, once they acknowledge that they are media companies, it changes, I think, the mindset and the approach. And I think that's fundamentally what's at issue.
And who's going to lead the regulation of the new media companies, the Europeans or the Americans?
Well, the Europeans are into it. I mean, you remember that when
Or the Chinese?
Well, step back for a minute. The Almunia did have a set of decisions. He was the DG, Director General of Competitiveness. And he did have, I think he had 3 cases up against Google, and he did have a deal worked out, I think, with Eric Schmidt. It was going to happen, and then it was nixed at the very last minute. And Vestager is now, she's given 1 decision. I think there are still 2 decisions to come down. And I was speaking to a minister of technology at one of the countries of Europe just recently, and his concern was, yeah, it's interesting actually. He had 2 concerns. One was that companies in his country didn't take digital transformation seriously enough. So he said, can you do anything, as much as you possibly can? Not our home country. Can you do as much as you possibly can to stimulate better understanding? And the second thing is, none of the platforms are, you know, European. In his country, something true of the UK, it's true of France, true of Germany, Italy, and Spain. They're all Chinese and they're all Americans. And by the way, if anybody in this room thinks that the Chinese copy and steal, if that was the case, it's not the case now. Everybody should go to Huawei's campus in Shenzhen, where 50,000 people are on that campus, and see out of 200,000 employees, and just see what they are doing. It's phenomenal. We were talking recently about who's going to be the first $1 trillion company. Somebody said to me, well, maybe we already have a $1 trillion company, and that's Huawei, but it's private. I mean, I guess if Saudi Aramco went public, it certainly would be
somewhere between
north.
1 and 2.
Yeah, north of that.
So let me take.
So these are big forces, but I come back to the fundamental point. These are as far as they interact with us, they are media companies, and they must take, because the TV channels have a responsibility. They have to get a license. They can lose their license if they do wrong things, etc.
Unless they agree with the president. From the sort of Facebook on into more granular, what's life going to look like? I mean, you have this, I keep saying this, you have this unique insight into so many different trends and facets and companies. What's it going to look like for all of us from a day-to-day point of view? 5 years from now, how are we going to buy products? How are we going to buy services? How are we going to learn about products and services? What's going to change?
I don't claim vision, perfect vision. Certainly not. Probably the opposite. Make one or two. I think voice again is going to become critically important. Every one of those 7 that I mentioned, 7 sisters, have a voice-activated device. I mean, I was in Hangzhou with Alibaba about 7 or 8 months ago, the week before they launched their voice-activated device called Genie. And voice is going to become more and more significant. I mean, Amazon have effectively carpet-bombed the United States with their devices, with Alexa devices, and they obviously want to have one of those in everybody's, in the rooms, in all your rooms in your house. Now, what are our clients going to do when you order? I mean, already, if you order on, if you've seen Scott Galloway's little film, it's worth watching on YouTube about the impact of Amazon. I mean, he dramatizes it, and it's 90 miles a minute. But I think it's a really interesting analysis of it. The Amazon subsidize their own brands on Alexa. So if I say I want Amazon batteries, which by the way already have a 30% market share in the United States, or Amazon baby wipes, which already have a 30% market share, it is cheaper ordered by voice than it is on the website. And if I say, can I have the cheapest baby wipes, it will be Amazon. Or the cheapest batteries, they won't be Duracell, they'll be Amazon batteries. So if you think of a world where voice is paramount, that is going to alter the way that people live their lives to a very, very significant.
So going from the web to mobile to voice is going to be transformational.
I think that's
equally transformational.
And that's where Amazon, and coming back to the regulatory questions and the duopoly questions, that's where Amazon and Alibaba and Tencent, really have a very interesting, I think, advantageous position. Now, you mentioned China in terms of regulation. I mean, China's regulation is different. It's a walled garden, literally. Although, I mean, say Google doesn't have a big business in China is wrong because they have Android there with a whacking great market share. But, Google and Facebook have both taken the position they won't be in China, but I think they are both trying to be in China. Whether they will get it back in or get in is another question. So it's a different type of system in China. But if you want to see the most sophisticated online, internet-driven economy, it's not the US, in my view. It's not the UK. It's not Denmark or whatever, Sweden or whatever. It's China. So I remember I left Beijing a few weeks ago. I went to these Hamer stores, which Alibaba have. These are stores in primary urban locations, but secondary sites. These are sites. I just went to one of them. Can't remember the square footage or meterage, but it was we parked the car in a car park, went up in an elevator, and it was in sort of bottom floors of a skyscraper. I think it maybe even have been subterranean. So not great space, but in a good location. They're called dark stores. And they provide an online service 24/7 for what they call SOS. So these might be toothpaste or detergent or whatever it is. And in a 3-kilometer radius of the store, you can get 24/7 delivery. From 10 till 10 during the day, you can get the full range. Either you can go and pick up or delivery. I think they said to me that we went around with the Alibaba people, they will cover the whole of Beijing with 80 stores, which they will do, because they move at the speed of grease lightning. And so you can only pay by Alipay, no cash. So you go in, you fill up your basket if you're taking it with you. You go to the kiosk, you pay. And because Amazon have got a store here which is cashless as well, you just walk in and walk out. I think that's with delivery as well. So when you start to look at these changes, these are very, very significant changes. And what does that do for retail distribution? And how our clients think about their brands. How do you make, so Dollar Shave Club by Unilever looks a much more intelligent, even more intelligent proposition, not to compete against Gillette, but to establish a direct relationship with Tim Collins,
Right.
On shaving products.
And the one that you
Or Marriott,
piggyback on with.
Marriott buys Starwood for its platform, Starwood Rewards platform, because it's a direct relationship. Or Fox buys Sky because the way to compete against Netflix or Amazon itself is to have a direct relationship. So these direct relationships, when voice is becoming more and more important, when direct distribution is becoming more and more important, absolutely critical. Well, I did notice one thing I thought was really interesting, Netflix buying a poster company in LA. So it's, and then the reason is to promote.
A billboard company. Billboard company.
Poster, yes,
right,
billboard,
right.
out of home, which goes to show. I mean, and of course, Alibaba and Tencent are buying stores.
So before we open things up for this eager group of brilliant students, just give us, forget the technology, forget all these changes that are happening in the world. You've had a remarkable career, other than the fact those 2 years you spent up in Massachusetts.
Yep.
A remarkable,
Best years of my life.
remarkable
I
career.
could go back to them.
And transformational. You have another alternative. You can come here and have more fun, as I did. You've had a remarkable career. You've heads of state, built a business from scratch.
You should be in advertising. You're full of it. You're full of it.
Maybe that's my next career.
Yeah.
But what is it that you can share with us that were really central lessons in that journey that other than that you're bright and you, in spite of your Harvard education, you did well. What are the things that are really the sort of home truths of that are applicable to everybody everywhere?
The only thing, well, far be it for me to give anybody advice. I don't think I'm in a position to do that. But I would just go back to what my dad said to me when I was about, I think probably when I was at business school, because I didn't do what most of the people in this room. I went straight from school, meaning university, to business school. I was a member of, Dean Athos was the admissions tutor at HBS in the year that I went. He said we were the most naive class of the Harvard Business School. It was at the time of the draft, so people tended to go straight from undergraduate to graduate. And there was only the average age going into the program was 24. So at the young end, which I think is that's my own view, that's the right. The trade was 2 years out of first degree, then you go to business school, then you go on. That was the McKinsey-Goldman deal, Faustian deal with HBS. And what he said to me was, build a reputation, not a reputation external, but a reputation within an industry. I mean, this is advice which is completely archaic. It's not the advice that anybody follows today. Build a reputation in an industry that you enjoy. That's the key. Something that you love to do. If you, having built that reputation, if you then want to go off and do something on your own, that's what you should do. But having spent a significant period of time, which is where it's counterintuitive today, on a company or on an industry. And then if you feel like doing something on your own, go ahead and do it. the skills, whatever they are, of starting a business and running a business, I think are totally different. And there are very few people who can start and run a business. And there are people who start things and can't run things. There are people who run things and can't start things. And I think combining the two, particularly in the sort of environment that we've been discussing, a world where the geographical opportunities are considerable and different, and the technological opportunities are moving at light speed, literally. I think having a combination of those skills, so I don't know enough about this school as to whether it builds both, but I think that's the critical thing. Building general managers, which is what I think HBS historically was for, is not the issue anymore. I think it's doing both. And then the other thing my dad said was, have a major stake in the company that you're in. That his advice was totally archaic today, that you shouldn't, double up on your pension sort of thing. He believed that, you'll find this amusing, portfolio investment was a mug's game, that it was a sort of almost like being in a casino.
Certainly worked out that way for me.
That what you should do is invest in the company that you know best, the one that you're
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of
in.
sense.
And so I think that, and then obviously from the point of view of uniting objectives and aligning objectives, it was critically important.
That resonates with me. And I would say that SOM is on that journey to try to instill in the students both sets of skills, which are, as you say, are really radically different. Having been in sort of both environments, radically different sets of skills, seeing lots of executives that have one, not the other. It's to find that combination is both rare and incredibly valuable. And you've done it, and I'm sure everybody here will after 2 years of SOM, repeat that. So why don't I just, who has a question?
Hi there, former Ogilvy employee.
Why don't you say your name and what year?
Hi, I work in communications here at SOM.
Okay.
You mentioned a lot of...
Why did you leave Ogilvy?
IBM laid a bunch of people off. It's fine. I'm
You-
not here.
You were working on the IBM business.
Yes. Yeah. The start digital in the brand newsroom. It was
Okay.
great. You mentioned a lot of dominant and emerging economies around the world, and if I'm not mistaken, you didn't mention the Middle East at all. But given Saudi's 2030 Vision 2030 program and Israel's all the entrepreneurship and startups coming out of there, I'm just curious: is the region just too politically volatile? All the region?
No,
is it in your sights as a consumer?
Absolutely. So just quite clear. So Asia Pacific, Latin America, Africa and the Middle East, and Central and Eastern Europe. Those are the BRICS. So it's front and center.
Yeah.
And we are doing a lot of work there. A lot. Won't go in the details, but a lot.
Including running the Prince's.
I'm not going to make
Yeah,
comment.
okay.
So
I saw you there. I know you're.
The economic health of the region.
no, I think obviously there's high risk, high reward. So there's volatility, as you indicate. Israel. I often wonder. I'm Jewish, so probably I can get away with saying this.
That's it, probably.
Possibly, maybe not. I often wonder how the Israeli army works, because everybody's a general. I mean, no Israeli, will ever do what you ask him or her to do. They always have a better idea than you. So, from an agency point of view, I would say Israel. It's a small country, obviously, is a very difficult market to operate in, and we've had a dramatic lack of success in Israel, if I'm being blunt. Having said that, from a technology point of view, absolutely superb. I always remember I used to organize a mayor's committee for the mayor of Jerusalem, where we took about 25, 30 executives for one day a year to Jerusalem. And then the deal was that we went into the West Bank to talk with Arab businessmen as well. So we did one day on one side and one day on the other side. And I remember we went to, because a lot of the technology is around the universities, and there was this company called Mobileye, remember, which went public and was bought by, I'm trying to remember who bought it recently, went public and was bought. And Mobileye technology was in both Ford and Volvo vehicles. And I remember I saw this technology, calling our lead on Ford, calling our lead on Volvo, and saying, do you know anything about Mobileye? And they professed total ignorance. And it's a bit like Intel Inside, because they don't push it, so probably it was not reasonable to think they would know about it. But the point of the story was this was a technology, not autonomous technology, but close to it, that was being developed at a university in Israel, then commercial applications, then public, and I think it's been purchased subsequent to IPO. That's a very good example of the sort of technology that you see there. So that is really exciting. The Middle East, has shifted. It used to be, if I think back many, many years, Beirut used to be the center, then it went to Dubai, and now Saudi, really Riyadh, has become very much more important. And obviously the changes there with the Crown Prince, and we've just seen his various trips around the world, signify the importance of the changes taking place. So I would put that front and center. However, the practices there, certainly historically, although the Crown Prince, for example, is changing that, make it somewhat difficult, or have made it historically somewhat difficult. And the standards are very different. Standards on transparency, for example, in our industry are very different. But they are changing. They are changing, and changing very quickly. So I think there is very significant opportunity there.
Excuse me, I'd like to remind everyone to please press the microphone button for the live stream when you speak. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Sir Martin. Brian Stanton, son of Frank Stanton, somebody you worked with back in the day at Simmons Research.
Yes, right. MRB.
Yes. I'm with Axiom Corporation, one of the other companies affected by the Facebook.
Right. Yeah. You were further up the food chain than
yes.
Yeah.
An honor to have you with us today. Okay. Question is, the media exposure of consumers is clearly shifting significantly. The WP family of companies, what efforts are you making to track the shift in attention, engagement to the different media, and then ad blocking? Yeah. Is that something?
Yeah, I mean, on ad blocking, I mean, obviously, if you have ad blockers of any sort, it puts a premium on capturing consumers' attention at the right moment, at the right time, in the purchase cycle or the purchase decision. So obviously trying to target on a one-on-one basis programmatically, subject to all the data issues and privacy issues, it becomes more and more important. So am I concerned about ad blocking at one level? Yes, but I think it gives us an opportunity to be more relevant. I mean, if I look at commercial TV in the United States, I must admit that I'm as frustrated often as others by a film or a program being constantly, so minutage is probably too high. I mean, it's being taken down, but it probably has to be taken down further. Certainly very different to other jurisdictions in which we operate. On audience measurement, we do audience measurement now in, I think it's 52 countries in the world. We do it still do it in Russia, although the Russian government expropriated 80% of our television audience measurement operation. We've been doing it for 20 years, and they passed a bill in the Duma to, just like the private channels, which are now 80% Russian-owned and 20% by the West, at least in theory. But we do it in China, we do it in Russia, we do it in Brazil, do it in India. But we do it across the whole of Latin America. We don't do it in the United States, that's Nielsen. Do it in the UK and many more. So I think it's 52, 53 markets we do. We do offline and online. We own 20% of ComScore, which have had some difficulties recently. But ComScore is one of, if not the, online measurement tool. So measuring consumer behavior on online and offline is critically important. So we're trying to, and this is a controversial thing because a lot of people look at our data business and say it's not growing as rapidly as it should, or not growing. Do you really need it? And I think the answer to that is first-party data is going to become more and more important. You know, whether it's GDPR that's going to drive that, or legislation or regulation that will make first-party data more, or you know, if we're trying to reach Tim on Dollar Shave Club, or you know, compete with Netflix and on Sky, understanding this data and using it in a proper way is going to become more and more critically important. So I think that area is really important. You know, whether, to be frank, we have to own 100% of our media, of our measurement operations is another question. But as a source of data, you know, a trading relationship where we pull in this data to understand, you know, we'll go back to voice again. I mean, it's going to be critically important. I mean, the battle with Amazon is going to be a data battle. I mean, so I'll give you one client, I won't say who it was. One client said, okay, we'll go on Amazon on the basis that Amazon provides us with first-party data. They go onto Amazon. Amazon doesn't provide them the data, they come off. And the dilemma is colossal. I mean, for example, we work with the Rakuten, the Japanese company, and they sponsor the Barca football team. And the reason they end up, I mean, this is an apocryphal story. I don't know whether it's true or not. But yeah, it's an interesting story because I think it poses the dilemma. So apparently, Nike wanted to sponsor Barcelona. And they went to Barcelona and said, okay, let's do the deal. But the condition is that the Barcelona shirt, sorry, Amazon wanted to sponsor Barcelona. Amazon wanted to sponsor Barcelona. They go to Barcelona and say, we want to sponsor you. The condition is that the Barcelona shirt, which is a Nike shirt, is available on Amazon. Nike said no. 3 months later, Nike decides that it's going to go on Amazon. I don't think they put all of their stuff on Amazon. They put, like Adidas, they put a restricted amount. But this is the dilemma. And then the Nike stock gets a bump because you get more revenue in. But long term, do you surrender the influence and control of the client? So the data piece, to me, is absolutely important.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Rima Jaiswal. I'm a second-year MBA student here at the School of Management, so thank you for being with us today. You mentioned the Fox and Disney deal, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on the overall media consolidation that seems to be happening, whether it's Fox deal or the AT&T Time Warner deal, where a big part of their rationale is targeted advertising. So given how closely media and advertising tend to be connected, what are the threats, opportunities to WPP, overall industry?
Well, Fox and Disney is an opportunity, big time. Particularly with Sky as well. We have to see what happens with Sky and Comcast. I don't think Comcast has actually bid. They've indicated a possibility or an intention. But basically, you know, Rupert Murdoch was the only true, in my view, global media. Now, that may be because he started in Australia, but, you know, you take the Indian Star assets and everything else he had with his investment in Sky, because he didn't have control, technically control 39% of Sky. You know, the Fox News Corp. I mean, he to me was the real now global media mogul. And in a way, it was a bit sad to me that he decided not to carry on. But you know, obviously interesting. I mean, I think the two seminal moments last year were around, what was it, February the 22nd or 17th, when Kraft Heinz bid for Unilever, because that sent a shock through packaged goods. It basically said that nobody was safe. And then the second thing was in November, was when Rupert decided to merge with or sell Fox to Disney. I think that would be, I mean, Bob Iger is going to stay on till 22, I think. He's exceptional. You should be really interviewing him.
He's here tomorrow.
Good. He's an exceptional man. I mean, his rapport with the creative communities in the companies he has added to Disney is exceptional. And he manages to attract, retain, and keep all these people. It does a really good job. He'll be there to implement it. AT&T Time Warner, we have to see what happens on that. Another example of political influence there as to what comes out. This is going to continue. I mean, I see consolidation at the client end, consolidation at the agency end, and consolidation at the media end. The media consolidation, I think, is good for us because we do have a strong position from a media planning and buying business point of view. It's a key part of our business. It's about $5 billion out of $20 billion of revenue for us. And we've done a lot in the programmatic area with Xaxis, which is our programmatic platform, with Triad, which is an online sales operation for the retailers like Walmart and others. So I think that's generally good. And it gets more balance. It comes back to this question about balance in the marketplace, the duopoly comment. If we can get more, that's why, I was pretty positive about Snap. Because, that's an alternative. Now, we only spend about 300 million with Snap, to give orders of magnitude. AOL, not dissimilar. So Twitter, not dissimilar. So you go from Google at 5 and Facebook at 2 all the way down. Amazon actually online, we think their online advertising is about 3 billion. We'll probably this year spend about 300 million. So they're not, when I said, I said Amazon was a pimple in relation to Google and Facebook. But Amazon will grow fast with it. See, Amazon poses a threat to Google on search because 55% of product searches in the United States, Kantar, our data company, believes that 55% of product searches in the US emanate in one way or another from Amazon. And then you've got the advertising platform, which is a threat to Google and Facebook. One other thing I should say, that when we talk about 100 billion at Google or 40 billion at Facebook, it includes the long tail, which is not, that's the old classified ads. So of the 100 billion, we reckon, there's no statistics from Google or Facebook about this, but about 70% is the long tail, not our heartland, or not even our, we don't go near it, really. So that leaves you, say, 30 billion, and our market share will be 5 out of 30. With Facebook, it's 40, so call it 12 billion, and we're doing 2. So our market shares are not dissimilar to what it would be with Fox or Disney or CBS or Viacom. So I think that explains the market structure. But net, I think we will still, CBS and Viacom are getting together, which will make a more, and still together, I think they're $40 billion. So 40 plays 450 at Facebook, I think it is now 500 or 600 billion with the others. So, I mean, you are talking about, still a long way to go. But I think it's inevitable for the reasons we just went through.
Go ahead.
Hi, I've got a question slightly following up on this. We've discussed tech companies. How do you think they influence your business in the agency world? And the reason I'm asking is if you look at places like Facebook and Google, they offer an advertising platform, they offer the data to plan it, and now they've also started having their own creative shops. What threat do you think this poses to the business model?
We often hear that, and so just it's related to that last answer. So I was with an investment institution, it's just a random sample of one. A guy said pretty much that question you asked me. And he said I said, where do you get that information from? He said, I've got a friend who's working at Facebook in London. So I said, would you mind if I sort of spoke to him? And he's a creative director. I said, would you mind if I spoke to him? And he said, no. He gave me his email. I sent him a note. He writes back, and we have a conversation. And I said, you know, what did you used to do? He said, I used to be a creative director at Foot Cone & Belding, FCB, part of IPG, in London. And I went to Facebook to work on creative, in their, whatever they call it, the creative studio. And I said, well, what do you do? Because I said, you know, really, remember, 70 to 80% of Facebook's revenues come from what I call the corner florist or the garage. So I said, I mean, you're doing, I'm providing creative services, he said, for Facebook's clients. So I said, you mean corner garages and florists? And he said, yes. So, you know, I think it's an easy jump and it's a lazy jump to say they're all building it, they're all doing it internally. They're not. I mean, I haven't got it with me, but Philip Schindler, who's the sort of, I suppose, the chief, our chief contact at Google, in their last earnings call, was saying, you know, we're not competitive with agencies, we're trying to build partnerships. We're in the midst of building the next billion consumers program with Google. We have a search product with Google called Starkiller, which gives us a unique, differentiated approach with clients on search. We've got 4 programs with them. We've got one big one with Facebook on creative and on data. So look, there are clients, we were talking with your faculty, and one of the comments made was that clients, CMOs, are building more in-house capabilities. Yes, they are, to some extent, but you know, there are claims made that these in-house facilities are being built by clients. I won't mention who the client is. One client says, we have an in-house capability. It isn't an in-house capability, it's an out-house capability, but the people who work in the, you know, wear shirts with the brand logo of the client, giving the impression that they're in-house, but they're not.
Just for the record, outhouse means something slightly different here.
Outhouse, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's not that. So
especially in Kentucky, where I'm from.
Good people want to work on a variety of things. It's like in-house media planning and buying. I don't think clients can, in the long term, refine the technology and get the best people and build it internally. I really don't.
You know, it's funny you should say that. I'm on this advisory board at McKinsey, and you know, they're made a transition from Dominic to new leadership. In the last meeting, which is probably almost a year ago, I asked, you know, what is, you know, in this transition, what's the thing that is the most important thing to pass along? And he said, look, our #1 metric is how many offers that we extend get accepted. So it's 84% or something when they make an offer, it gets accepted. He said, because that's our whole thing. So the proposition of whether it's Facebook or WPP or Procter & Gamble is going to, the technology is going to be obviously critical, and engineers and all that, but it's also going to be, you know, where is a great place to work? And I think that mobility, the technology, the other thing that's going on is in, you know, you can work from wherever you are and for whomever you'd like. And that's going to make a real difference, I think, in the nature of competitive.
Clients should be working on, you know, we have, in one way or another, 200,000 people in 113 countries. And we have, you know, the distribution capability. Clients should be, in my view, focusing on the strategy. We should be doing the integration, you know, providing one firm to do, you know, and we should be one firm, not multiple silos. I mean, we have to simplify the verticals, focus more on a country and client basis across the enterprise, and then have digital underpinning. That's it, in my view, anyway. You know, digital underpinning to everything we do. You know, we just recently announced Hogarth, which is our digital asset management platform, so it collects all the marketing assets of a company on a digital platform, can be pulled down anywhere in the world, can be adapted to certain guidelines, but it's a perfectly coordinated way of doing things with really advanced technology. That's really what we should be doing with clients, and they should be focusing on the strategy. We should do the integration, we should do the distribution. I don't think they should have the, and that's in a world where there is very slow growth, not very slow growth, not as good top line growth, GDP growth as we saw pre-Lehman, where there's very little inflation and therefore very little pricing power. People have to focus on costs, quite apart from the short-term issues of ZBB and activists and private equity.
My name is Elaine, and very glad to have you today with us. And because I came from China, and most importantly, I used to work for WPP, one of the agencies called GTB.
Which one?
GTB in
Okay.
Shanghai office. I left WPP because not because of that I want to go somewhere else. It was because of I want to be better and go back to WPP to join the fellowship
Good,
program
come back soon,
afterwards.
come back soon.
Yeah. And so my
Where
question.
were you working, in Shanghai or?
In Shanghai, yeah.
Okay.
And one of the questions was 2 years ago, we moved into a magnificent building called WPP Campus.
Yes.
With all the agencies in Shanghai because
Yeah.
of, I guess that was one of the actions taken given the strategy of horizontality.
Yeah, and bringing
inside
everybody
the group.
together,
So
yeah.
I'm just wondering, I want to switch the gear a little bit. I'm wondering how that's going on, and do you have any challenges?
Well, you probably know more about it than me, so you should tell me.
Because I've left the company 2 years
Sorry?
ago. I've left the company 2 years ago, so I didn't know how that's going.
Well, yeah, I'm sure you've got friends still there. So would you do me a favor and find out? Just WeChat them and let me know. Just let me know. Listen, we have 3,500 people in that skyscraper, and it was quite controversial because it was an area. It was the second best district in Shanghai. It wasn't the best district. People, because I can't remember how many brands we had there, but a large number. But it was the first big project. We're doing the same thing in Madrid in the old Telefonica building. People are starting to move into that. We're doing it in Amsterdam. We've done it in London. We're doing it in London in 2 major buildings. This is around, part of what you said, horizontality, which is a terrible word, but trying to integrate our offer. Tim mentioned McKinsey's, that we would operate like McKinsey's. And, coming here, I was listening to a call in relation to a client. We were pitching for a piece of business, and I was listening to a presentation by some of our people, and we still get into this habit of identifying people by brands, by Ogilvy. And now at Ogilvy, John Seifert is running a thing called The Next Chapter, which is John comes into Ogilvy and finds 50 brands, 50 sub-brands. If we were advising our client on this, we would say, this is is it crazy? Simplifying is really critically important. I mean, there are 2 parts to it. One is simplifying it such that I could explain it to you easily if you were a client. The other part of it, which is even more important, is implementing it, because we can sit in a room and say we've simplified it, but actually doing it. I mean, our problem is that we like to be tribal. You like Ogilvy, the agency you said was, GTB, right? So that's the Ford coordinated unit. So this is the in-house, it's outhouse, sorry, but it's effectively the agency for Ford, which is the most integrated structure that we have. The other one would be Red Fuse for Colgate. That's the way we have to go. But that offends all the traditions and the reasons that we get up in the morning. We get up in the morning not necessarily primarily because we're part of WPP, but because we're part of Ogilvy or we're part of GTB or whatever it happens to be. So we think it's important. The clients don't. The clients want the best people working for them. They don't care where they come from. They come from outside WPP. One client just recently suggested that it would effectively be 3 groups. So ourselves and 2 of our competitors get together and get our best people from each of those 3 groups and put them together for them. So because of the opportunities and the pressures that we see, they're really starting to experiment with the structures. Now, what we have to do is to create one firm. And when I was coming down here, I heard this presentation, and the guy doing the presentation referred to a brand. not the technology that we were exposing to the client, and referred to another brand, not the data capability we had. So one was digital and one was data. And he shouldn't refer to, this is the company that developed this technology. And he shouldn't refer to, this is the data that's provided by this brand. It's all provided by WPP. I don't care what you call it, but it should be one.
I think we have time for one last question. Well, we'll have two questions.
Arun was one of the people who said that Mark Zuckerberg will appear in a T-shirt. So we're putting you on the spot.
I did, yeah.
You send me your email, and we're going to exchange on that.
Yeah, we'll do, surely. Thank you so much. So I'm in the Master of Advanced Management program here, MAM. And my question is on the voice part of the discussion, I think. Moving forward, I think, what you said is true in terms of where the growth will come from, Asia, Africa, Middle East, LATAM, and so forth. How is the voice dynamic going to impact these countries, considering so many cultures, languages, and so forth? And also in terms of how the media is transacted by voice. Are we going back into, sort of a little bit of a radio kind of days in a way? Or, how is the interaction going to evolve in these countries, considering there's so much growth to come and new technologies will influence massively compared to established or developed countries, so to speak?
Well, I don't know, is the answer. Other than, the Chinese example, I think is a really interesting one. I said, don't go, that's not to diminish what happens here, obviously it's fundamental, but I do think the Chinese, I think basically we don't, the West really doesn't want China to succeed. It used to be the same thing about the South Koreans or the Japanese or the Hong Kong Chinese, they steal things. We used to say they steal from us. Well, that may copy, is a more polite way of putting it. That may be the case. It isn't the case anymore. And the reason I think it is that they went from analog to smartphone almost in one leap. We went from analog to desktop to phone to smartphone. And they've leapfrogged. Now, it could be they get stuck in smartphone technology and they move out. I don't think that will happen. If I look at that Hamer example with Alibaba and Alipay, that's going to be copied by Tencent. Pony has pushed Tencent immediately into making a major number of minority investments in fixed retail. So you see this aggressive entrepreneurial style, which is going to continue. So my view would be that the technology will be sufficiently sophisticated to deal with the sorts of dialect issues, multilingual issues that you talk about. My own view is that, so you take India, for example. Where are you from? Okay. You take India as an example. I think the most interesting thing is if Amazon and Flipkart get to grips with distribution in India, and you know better than I do the proportion of the population that depends for their livelihood on distribution in one way or another, the political ramifications of rationalization of distribution in a country like India are fundamental. So the BJP and Modi or the Congress Party or whoever are going to have to pay very close heed, very close attention to the impact of significant changes in distribution on their political base. And I don't think that has really filtered through. I mean, everybody talks about the need to rationalize it, but it's like the inequality debate or issue post-Lehman and the rise of populism. I'm not a bull on the impact of technology. I think basically technological improvements, whilst making life better, destroys job prospects, doesn't enhance them. And I think that's going to be a big problem. And we're in the midst of seeing that. Now, there are others who say rubbish. You create more opportunities than you destroy. There are some who say, the top of the pyramid does well, the bottom does well. It's the stuff in the middle that's going to be squeezed.
We're going to have to get you to come back for that. That's a rich debate. One quick last question, and then we're going to...
Sure. So my name is Jacqueline. Thank you for coming. Speaking of McKinsey, you mentioned you're trying to provide a one-stop solution similar to what they're doing. It seems like they're also trying to do what WPP is doing, providing now more of the advisory in marketing, media, et cetera. Do you think, and by acquiring some of the agencies?
I'm more concerned about an Accenture, which has got a 100 billion market cap. We're at 20. McKinsey is a partnership. It sucks out, I don't mean this negatively, it sucks out all its earnings every year. It has no P&L basically, and it has no balance sheet because it distributes all its earnings to its partners. So I think the partnership structure is now if it went public, problem. If Deloitte Digital went public, problem. Remember, Accenture was part of Arthur Andersen, they split the two. Andersen went public and failed. Andersen failed after Enron. Accenture went public and has been very successful. But Accenture goes in at the top, says, you're spending too much money as a CEO, and we're a subset of that, so they're looking down on us, if you like. And they say to you as a CEO, you're spending too much money. If we save you any money, we'll take a percentage of what we save. You're not going to say no to that. That's the danger. Now, do they compete with us head-to-head on digital? We just hired the head of Accenture Digital in Europe to run our French company and our French media company. So I think we can compete effectively on in the trenches, hand-to-hand combat, etc. I think the difficulty is this strategic thing. So we have to position ourselves, I think, more in that area. On the McKinsey thing, I think that's different. Bain, BCG is different. Now, do they cause us aggravation because they come in and say to clients, you should be more efficient, you should reduce your costs? Yes, of course they do.
Well, this has been fascinating. Such an interesting...
I'm glad you've been fascinated. Whether anybody out there has been fascinated or not is another question.
They look fascinated. I can just say. They look more fascinated than the last time I was here. Thank you all for coming, and thank you so much.
Very much. Oh, that's very sweet. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Anybody want to ask any questions, msorrell@wpp.com. And come back. The lady from Ogilvy.
Yes, recruiting here, right?
Yeah, we're recruiting, yeah. Okay, come back soon.
I wanted to really do a picture of the show.
Yes, of course you can. Of course you can.